Hi, everyone. I'm Michelin Sisti, and you are watching the podcast where nostalgia comes alive. Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show. Roll it.
Welcome to Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, the podcast where nostalgia comes alive. Since July of 2021, Jake and his friends have interviewed professionals in the worlds of acting, directing, writing, puppeteering, and many more. Who will they be chatting with in this week's interview? Find out in this Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show episode.
Hello everyone, welcome to this episode of Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, where nostalgia comes alive. Have you here with us? Thank you for joining. As always, I'm your host, Jake Deffinbaugh. With me today, as always, our co-hosts, Chris Bixby and Matt Bingel. How you guys doing?
Doing good.
Doing good. Hello, everybody. How are you, Jake?
I'm doing great, Matt. Thank you for asking. Chris, what do we have for today?
Yes, again, happy you're here with us, folks. Today's guest is an actor and puppeteer. He has done on-camera acting for projects for Nickelodeon, ABC, and many other networks. But as a puppeteer, he worked on various projects for the Jim Henson Company, and since 2010, has been an additional Muppet performer with the Muppets, as well as some other things we'll touch base on later. And here he is, Michael Oosterom. Michael, happy to have you here.
Hey, happy to be here. I'm really happy you pronounced my last name correctly.
Yay.
My pleasure.
My last name, and nobody knows what to do, but you nailed it. So thank you.
I know the feeling. The feeling is mutual.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, so to start this off, could you tell our audience a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. Well, like you said, I'm an actor and a puppeteer. I've been an actor, a professional actor since I was about 18 years old. Started mostly in theater. Spent a lot of time in the San Francisco Bay Area. Moved down to LA about 1999 or 2000, and was doing what actors do, auditioning, pounding the pavement. And then at a certain point, I had to get a job, a day job, and a good friend of mine was working at Jim Henson's Creature Shop. So I got a job there answering the phones and being a production assistant or a runner, where I would drive all over Burbank and get all the stuff they need to make the puppets and the creatures. And long story short, about 11 years later, I was a puppeteer with the Henson Company and Puppet Up, the live improv comedy show. I was the production manager of the Creature Shop, which meant I did all the budgeting and the hiring of people and monitoring all the builds and stuff from start to finish. And I don't do that anymore. I'm solely a performer with the Jim Henson Company, but that's my story in a nutshell. I'm an actor who had to get a job and happened to get a job at one of the greatest places in the world. And that turned into a wonderful career in puppetry.
Awesome. So what was your childhood like before becoming a puppeteer and actor?
It was great. I had a really good childhood. My parents worked very hard and, we had a good life. I grew up in Delaware, Wilmington, Delaware. I grew up between Newark, Delaware, and Wilmington. Newark is the college town where the University of Delaware is, and then Wilmington is the biggest city in Delaware. And it was a great childhood. It was a great childhood. It was a great 70s childhood. So I guess that means a lot of breakfast cereal and television and stuff. And definitely, watched a lot of Sid and Marty Krofft, a lot of Jim Henson stuff. I was a kid who was into movies and television and science fiction and fantasy and stuff. So without really setting out to do it, I'm really grateful that I ended up working and do work with the Jim Henson Company, because that's something I used to see, in behind the scenes magazines and stuff I used to get, about the movie business. And I would see Jim Henson and Frank Oz and everybody and thought, wow, that's cool. How do you get to do that? And lo and behold, I got to do it. And the one thing that was important was that my junior high school and high school had a pretty strong drama program that I aspired to, and then I participated in. I had really good teachers there. And that set me on my path to becoming an actor. And then when it came time to go to college, I did major in theater. I went to Temple University in Philadelphia, not far from Delaware at all, just across the state line. And like I said, then I moved to San Francisco and eventually Los Angeles.
Nice.
Awesome. So now, what inspired you to want to get into puppetry and acting professionally?
Well, a lot of people who get into puppetry want to be puppeteers from a very young age. And it's not that I didn't want to be a puppeteer, but I didn't think about puppetry, really. And a lot of puppeteers do get into it because they're asked to participate, and that was me. I will tell you, as a kid, I tell this all the time in interviews. I did have my very best friend, Andrew Durbin, when I was a little kid. He had these really awesome Bert and Ernie toy puppets. They were kind of rubber puppets, but they were Bert and Ernie. And I actually saw them. There's a Jim Henson exhibit that's been going around the country, and it was at the Skirball Institute here in LA. And there were things behind glass that I had found at my job at the creature shop. I'd rescued from the wrong box and put it in the right box. And the next thing it goes to archives. Now it's in the museum. So I was very proud of that. But I saw those toys from 1972 or three in the museum. I thought, well, that's where it is. He and I would play with these puppets, and every day we would come up with a puppet show, and then we would ask our audience to come down to the basement to watch it. Now, our audience was his mother. She was the only person that was around. So we would set up a card table, and we would try to remember what we'd come up with to do, but we'd always forget. We were little kids. We'd forget what we came up with. So we would make stuff up. And that's what I do now. I make stuff up with puppets in the Jim Henson Company's Puppet Up Uncensored. So it's very strange that I was doing that at like preschool age or kindergarten age. And now in my midlife, it's exactly what I do for a living. It's kind of crazy. So I got into puppetry by being adjacent to the puppets. When I worked at the creature shop, we had tremendous respect for the puppets. They were what we made. They're very valuable. They're very important. So I didn't play with them. You don't mess with them. You put them in their box and you ship them very carefully and all that stuff. But because I had studied improvisation at the Groundlings here in Los Angeles, I actually used to set up the rehearsal room for Puppet Up. I'd lay out all the puppets, set up the camera, and I'd look and go, wow, that looks like a lot of fun. I wish I could participate in that. And somewhere down the line, someone asked me, because they found out I'd done Groundlings, would I like to take one of the workshops? And in that workshop, I brought into it my experience with improvisation, and the Henson Company taught me how to puppeteer with a Henson puppet into a camera lens using a monitor, using the Henson puppetry, the Muppet style of puppetry technique. So I kind of stumbled into puppetry a little bit, but I certainly, when the opportunity presented it to me, I didn't shy away from it.
Sounds like it was just meant to be,
I think it was fated to be, because I was a huge Muppet fan when I was a kid. My sister and I watched it every weekend. It was on Saturday night, I think, in my area in Philadelphia, and it was definitely destination television for us.
Definitely.
Oh, yeah. So early on in your career, you were a recurring performer on the Nickelodeon series The Amanda Show. What was working on that like?
Oh, that was great fun. That was when I first got to LA. It was one of my first television jobs. It's kind of a crazy experience. I played a bunch of different like security guards and paramedics and stuff. And they shot it at a theater, the Nickelodeon on Sunset. Is a big stage on Sunset Boulevard. And in the 60s, it was the Aquarius Theater where the musical Hair, when it came to Los Angeles, it kind of camped there and they renamed it the Aquarius Theater. And recently, when Quentin Tarantino made Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, is that the name of the movie?
I think so, yeah.
They repainted it to look like it did in 1968. So that was really cool to drive down Sunset Boulevard and say, oh, there's the big groovy 1960s thing. And I could walk to that studio from my apartment in Hollywood. So it's the strangest thing to, manipulate my life to such a way that I'm working in television, yet walking to work like I live in some little village. And I got to tell you, when I worked at the Jim Henson Company, I lived a block away from it. And I picked out that apartment before I worked at the Jim Henson Company. So it was very strange to walk to work like I lived in some quaint little village. But, I'm working at the Henson Company. Oh, there's Paul McCartney. There's, U2. There's I don't know if I ever saw U2 there. But anyway, but the Nickelodeon show was great. It was a big popular machine. I remember getting Amanda's autograph for my nephew because she was his first crush, his first TV crush. I remember asking Amanda, who was like, for my nephew, he was thrilled by that. And it was a lot of fun. I got to do funny stuff, and the kids were great back then. And it was a really great experience. I remember one time I was sitting there because I played a lot of security guards. I was in my security guard costume, and they said, "Wait here by the front gate." And all these tourists were walking by asking me questions, thinking I was a security guard. And at first I thought, well, I'm an actor. And I thought, just answer their questions. Just do your best. It's easier to just let the security guard just, oh yeah, it was built in 19 whatever. And that's where Aquarius, the musical, Hair was done here. I ended up doing a sketch there Hollywood is so funny sometimes. It can be such a small town. One of the first things I did was she did a parody of Judge Judy, and Gary Williams played the bailiff. And Gary Williams does a nice, great career in LA. And he was there that day, and he was a guy, every time I see him, it's great to see him. And then I did a sketch called Moody's Point, which was a
Oh yeah.
parody of Dawson's Creek. Yeah. And one of the young men in the sketch is 18-year-old actor. Well, 10 years later, I ended up being in the Groundling Sunday Company with him, a fellow named Taron Killam, who went on to Saturday Night Live and stuff. And
Oh yes, yeah. He's wonderful.
oh, joke. Like, I worked with you when you were 18. I worked with you when you were 28. I guess I'll see you when you're 38, and we'll work together again. So I don't think he's 38 yet.
That's awesome. So now you also acted in the ABC sitcom Help Me Help You. Can you talk a bit about doing that?
Yeah, that show didn't last very long. I don't even know if it finished its first season. And I had a very small role on that show as Jerry, the office manager. And what's his name from Cheers? Ted Danson was on that show.
Oh, nice.
And I was very proud of a bit I was doing one day where one character had poisoned everybody in the office and given them food poisoning. And the next day at work, I pass him on my way to the elevator, and he says, "How you doing?" And I smile at first, and I say something like, "What do you think?" And I give him the business, give him an attitude. And we were shooting it, and over my shoulder, I saw Ted Danson poke his head in to see what was shooting, and he laughed at my take. And I never did a scene with Ted Danson, but I did crack him up. And that's the type of thing you take with you. I remember that. I cracked him up. And I guess apparently, like, the show got canceled, but my sister was living in Australia. I was in 3 episodes, but only 2 episodes aired in America. But my sister saw the 3rd one in Australia. And I don't even remember what I did. That was a long time ago. But that's the way it happens. You work on a show, and sometimes they just go away.
Yeah.
You just kind of let it go. The fun is doing the work on the day you do the work, and you try to let go of the other stuff. Or you sit around and watch yourself on TV. You can do that too.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So moving on to puppetry, as you mentioned before, we've done a lot of work with Jim Henson's Creature Shop, including on the movie Where the Wild Things Are. What was that like?
That was great. Now, Where the Wild Things Are, we built that show, all those big creatures here in Los Angeles, and then it went off to Australia to film. And I really wasn't part of that build. We divided the shop up. One team was on our Burbank facility building those creatures, and I was down in Hollywood. What I used to do is I used to manage the Muppets themselves. It was sort of cool. I used to have a key on my key ring, which was the key to the room where the Muppets were kept. And when the Muppets needed to go somewhere, I would get them, hand them over to the people. So I was still managing the Muppets, and I wasn't really pulled into the Wild Things team. But then, after they filmed in Australia, they needed to do about 10 days of pickup shots to finish the movie. And they filmed those pickup shots here in Los Angeles. And that's when I joined the local team. I was part of the team that helped the main character, Carol, I think, the suit performer, get in and out of his costume between shots. We made sure he was hydrated, made sure he was, because those suits were very large and someone could get worn out very quickly. So we keep them hydrated, make sure they're healthy. And then through just happenstance, they needed to reshoot the scenes with the 2 owls that tell a knock-knock joke to the boy and to Max and one of the Wild Things. So that was great. I puppeteered one of the owls with Dave Barclay, who's a great puppeteer. He worked on Yoda. I mean, everyone jumps to that. He's done a lot of great stuff, but he did work on Yoda on The Empire Strikes Back. He helped assist Frank Oz on Yoda, and I think on yes, he worked on Return of the Jedi too. It'd be a great guest for you guys. And that was crazy because we were shooting a scene on a beach here in LA to match a beach in Australia. And the beach in Australia was an empty beach. You can see on those shots, there's nobody around. But for these tight shots, we were shooting, I think it was Hermosa Beach, and there were tourists and people everywhere. And like the way film permits work, you can't keep people from walking along the shoreline. So we were just grabbing these shots in between people walking by in their bathing suits and stuff. And it cut together seamlessly, but it was kind of tense to try to get the scene done before, some pretty girl walks by or some family of 10 walks by or something like that. That was great fun. I got to work with Spike Jonze and Catherine Keener, and the boy was great, and the puppets were cool. And that's one of those things where I didn't do a lot of work on it, but I'm very proud to have it my resume because it's such a cool project. It's such a cool movie. A lot of people are big fans of that movie too. So
Absolutely. So another movie that you worked on was Forgetting Sarah Marshall as a puppeteer and production supervisor. What was it like working as a puppeteer, but also what does a production supervisor actually do?
well, in that case, that was similar to well, I didn't, like I said, I didn't really production manage the Wild Things build, but Jason Segel and Nick Stoller came to the Creature Shop because they knew. Now the movie's been around for a while, so it's a spoiler, but the film ends with a big giant Dracula puppet musical, and he wanted the four main characters to be represented by these puppets. So he came to us, and we had some meetings with him, and we talked about what kind of puppets, what they would look like, and then we built the puppets. So as a production supervisor, my job then was to, be in on that first meeting, kind of facilitate that meeting, take notes, and then consult with the creative people, the people that are going to build the puppets, and ask them how long will it take to build it, what's your materials budget for such a thing, and then coordinate with this production, like when do you need them by, when does this scene shoot. There's a kind of a funny little side story. This was around the time that the Muppets transferred from the Henson Company to the Walt Disney Company.
Right.
And we were meeting in the Creature Shop with Jason, and he said, "Oh, hey, can I see Miss Piggy?" And I said, "Well, she's not here. She's now at Puppet Heap. She's not here anymore. She's with the Disney Company." A couple of years later, Jason and Nick made the Muppets movie, which I also got to puppeteer on. And he was being interviewed, I think, in GQ magazine, and he talked about how that movie came about. And he said, "Well, we were working on Forgetting Sarah Marshall, and I was at the Creature Shop, and I asked if I could see Miss Piggy." And he said, "Everybody got kind of downtrodden and sad," and explained that they weren't here anymore. And I remember thinking, well, I wasn't sad. That deal between Henson and Disney was so hard to explain to people because everyone's kind of thinks one owns the other. Like one time we even had a Disney safety officer came to our shop to check our safety, that we were following all the rules, because he thought we'd sold the company to Disney, but we hadn't. Like it was everyone else. So I wasn't sad. I was just like, took a deep breath, like, okay, now I got to explain the Muppets deal again, because I have to explain it to people so many times. And then to make it more complicated, when they made that movie, they filmed it on the Henson Company lot, and they dressed it to look like the Muppet Studios. So everyone just thinks Disney owns the Henson Company, and they don't. It's just one of those things that, like, let the lawyers explain it to you. I'm just a guy, I don't want to. I don't have to explain this.
Yeah.
But that was great fun because Jason was a huge fan of puppets. Obviously, he went on to do the Muppets. And then that finale scene, we've provided 4 puppets in this dancing mummy rig. But then like other puppet companies in Los Angeles provided marionettes and giant paper mache heads. So it was like a big puppeteer jamboree the day we shot that scene. And Bill Hader was there, and Jonah Hill was there. I also shot with Russell Brand when he sang the Letter U song that I think is on the DVD extras.
Oh, yeah.
That was a great experience. That's one of those things where like you're in puppets, and as you'll know from my career, I tend to work in the wing of the Henson Company that's more adult. I do more like shows that are less for kids and more for the whole family or for adults. So puppets will bring you to places where here I am hanging out with Catherine Bell and Kristen Bell and Russell Brand and Jason Segel and all these, and Mila Kunis and all these cool people, let alone talk shows I've done and the working on the Muppets TV show. I've kind of forgotten who I've worked with, and I'll see someone on the gram. Oh, I worked with them. I may have been on the floor underneath them with a mouse on my hand, but I worked with them. I've been around a bunch of people.
Nice. So, what was Jim Henson's Creature Shop Challenge like?
Well, that was a huge deal. I had a very small participation in that, and I'm sort of grateful because that was a big endeavor, and it really was a true contest. They had to follow game show rules. So as puppeteers, we were often sequestered away. Yes, we were sequestered away from the creatures that were being built, so that when you saw us be presented with the creature or the puppet we were going to puppeteer, it was really the first time we were seeing it. There was no cheating on that show. And I remember feeling, because I wasn't working at the Creature Shop anymore, it was so complicated that I was really relieved I wasn't working at the Creature Shop anymore, because they were building so much stuff and they were building it so quickly and they were using every inch of the shop. I do like how the Creature Shop got a facelift, a makeover for that show. They kind of made every corner photogenic in the Creature Shop, and that kind of cracked me up as the guy that used to do the hazardous materials report or used to sweep up the shop or clean it up. I was like, wow, they made it look a lot prettier than it was when I worked there. And they've kept a lot of that stuff at the Creature Shop, like the break room and stuff. They painted the walls and made it look all kind of groovier than it maybe might have looked in reality. But that
Nice.
was a lot of fun. It was great fun to see the people who were building and to see them still. Robert, who won the contest, he created, I'm pretty sure, I think he built the puppet Rankle that I puppeteered in Curious Creations of Christy McConnell. So he's still a big part. He was just on Five Nights at Freddy's, I believe. I think I saw him being interviewed about that. So
Oh, nice.
it's
Nice.
also cool to see people get into the Creature Shop. Usually has a pretty locked door. We're very careful about who comes and goes because so many people are fans and everything. And you got to be careful with security, and people don't take pictures of things that maybe your client doesn't want people to see it and stuff. So it's really great to have the door cracked open a little bit and to have people who want to be a part of it get to be a part of it.
Absolutely.
Now, your work with the Muppets started as a puppet builder on the Muppets Wizard of Oz. What was that like?
Well, that's a misnomer. I don't build puppets. I don't know how to build puppets, but I manage the puppet build on that. Like I
Oh,
explained,
okay.
like we were told we're going to need to do, a scarecrow version, a Kermit as the scarecrow. We're going to need to do Fozzie as the cowardly lion, and then the Gonzo as the Tin Man and stuff. Those are great. Those puppets are beautiful. And so again, I was making sure I would consult with the creatives. Who do you want to hire? Who do we want to bring in to work on this and that and this and that? And that was crazy great. And then I think we shipped those puppets off to Canada. So that's one of those ones where I didn't go along with the shoot. I didn't participate in the shoot. So on IMDb, it says I was a builder, but I'm not a builder. All credit.
Of course.
I know how to,
Of
I
course
know how
it.
to buy the builders their foam and their dye and their fabric and where to get it, but I don't know how to build a puppet.
Of course it's IMDb. Of
Yes.
course it is.
Yes. So, as we talked about again earlier, for many years now, you've been a puppeteer in a number of projects with the Muppets, starting with the Jason Segel movie in 2011. I'm kind of curious, do you have any favorite scenes you got to work on for that movie?
Favorite scenes from the Jason Segel Muppets movie? Well, it was a lot of fun to film the finale on Hollywood Boulevard in the middle of the night. That took all night. That
Oh
was
yeah.
great fun.
Hmm.
Then in the beginning of the very next movie, Muppets Most Wanted, it picks up exactly where the last one left off. So we had to recreate exactly where we left off, like 2 or 3 years later. Um, there was a great scene. There's a scene, a reaction shot. I can't remember the context, where there was we were at the Los Angeles Theater downtown, one of these big old movie palaces. That was fun to be in that place because that place felt haunted. So in between shots, you're kind of, it was really crazy, great. Um, there was a shot that had so many Muppets in it that they actually we had two Muppets on each hand. They wanted as many Muppets as they could in the background, all going like, whoa, like everybody reacting. There were people in that shot that weren't even puppeteers, like some producers and stuff got in on it and got puppets on their hands, and I think some of the extras got puppets on their hands too. And that's the kind of thing where can I do this? Can I do two-handed puppetry? I've never tried two-handed puppetry. Now I can. I've done two-handed puppetry. It's often common in background scenes where they'll put two puppets on your hands and stuff.
Right, yeah.
Um, I think it just what it is mostly is like as a background puppeteer for the Muppets, I don't play any of the main characters, but I might puppeteer one of the main characters with one of the main performers doing another character, and then that puppeteer will give me notes like, oh, that character usually has their head in this position, or they would react like this way and stuff. So it's great to work with them and the honor of being able to puppeteer a character like Link Hogthrob or I remember there was a shot in Muppets where they gave me Janice to puppeteer, and Janice has a very narrow neck, and I was really afraid I was going to break the puppet. And I told him again, like, don't give me Janice again. My hand doesn't fit inside Janice. I was instead of doing this, I was like doing this, and like luckily all she had to do was look. She didn't have to talk or anything, so it wasn't too bad. Um, I think the Hollywood Boulevard overnight was a lot of fun. That felt kind of
Oh
magical.
yeah. A lot of puppets in that.
Oh yeah.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. So, I'm curious, what was it like skipping ahead a few years? What was it like working on the ABC Muppet series?
That was fantastic. And I will say, I worked on every episode of that, but because of whatever contracts or SAG-AFTRA rules, I only have credit for one episode on IMDb. But that one was so much work that I started a spreadsheet of all the puppets I did on that. I tended to do background work on Bobo the Bear. I tended to be in Bobo a lot. Swedish Chef every once in a while, sometimes just the Swedish Chef's hands. Um, Link Hogthrob. Uh, I kind of can't remember. I'd have to check my list. But that was great because I'd go in once, almost, every week I would go in and work on that. And I might be there for a day or two for the big crowd scenes. And what was really cool about that set was it was built, 5 feet off the ground or 4.5 feet off the ground to accommodate the puppeteers. But it really was built in the relationship you'd see on the show. Like a lot of times on a TV show, like, a character may be in their living room and then go into the kitchen. And the kitchen is a set that's built, 50 feet away. And then they move the camera and the character comes into the kitchen. But in that show, going from Kermit's office to the writer's bullpen, the table, to what they would have their craft services, the back of the Miss Piggy Late Night with Miss Piggy set, onto the stage where the band was and the audience seating was all built in relationship to how it looked on camera. I think that's a very rare thing. And other than that, it was just great fun because it was great work. And I got to work with all my friends, all my colleagues, my puppet friends. The show was very funny. I snuck a joke in there. I pitched a joke into that show and it got on the air, and I'm very proud of it.
Oh
Miss
wow.
Piggy came back from Argentina. And if you recall, and she had that little Gloria Stefan penguin with her.
Yes, that Peter Linz played.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, that's right.
Probably shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say it. So Uncle Deadly had the line, "Oh no, she thinks she can speak Spanish now." And Piggy had been saying, "Oh, Kermit, buenas noches," and something, something. And I turned to the director. I was just waiting to do Beautiful Day Monster poking his head in the background of a shot. And the director walked past me and I said, "Hey, can I pitch a line? Instead of buenas noches, what if you said bonus nachos?" And I over to Eric Jacobson and said, "This time say bonus nachos." And it got on air.
Oh my god,
That's wonderful.
Oh my
that's
gosh.
great.
That's a joke. A joke I'm very proud of.
Oh, that's great.
That's great.
Wonderful.
So recently, you also worked briefly on a new Muppet series, The Muppets Mayhem. I love that series. What was that like?
Well, for me, that was not that I didn't work on that very much, to be honest with you. I only worked in the very first episode when the band is on stage, rocking out at the El Rey Theater here in LA. I was on a team with Peter Linz and I believe, yes, it was Stoff Shear, because they had the band was full body, right? And we were doing green screen stuff. So I was wiggling. I had a handle on the back of Lips, the trumpet player. I had Lips's torso. Peter had his hand in Lips's head, and Stoff was making Lips's feet dance. And
Okay.
together we coordinated to make Lips look like he was, doing steps left, right. And technically that was really cool because it was like a computerized camera that would do this beautiful pass, and we would all do what we were doing. And we knew they were going to remove us in our green screen outfits later. Then, of course, they would shoot the plate, which is nobody up there at all. And then we all got out of the way. And then they shot Animal and Dr. Teeth, because if they had tried to shoot them at the same time, we in our green suits would have blocked them. So that's like a 3 or 4 layer tracking shot. That's the type of thing that technology is so cool, that the computer can remember exactly how that shot went by and recreate it seamlessly. So you get all the layers you need to glue them all together in the computer. And then I worked the next day at the beach, but as often happens, they had a pile of Muppets and I was supposed to help somebody, Janice, I think, with her hands. And then right before they shot, said, "I really don't need you to help." Dave Redmond said, "I don't need you to help." So I didn't do anything. I just kind of, had a sandwich and went home. But, like I said, I've done a lot of stuff with the Muppets and I'm not complaining at all. I've got a list of all the different characters I've had the honor to play. And
Oh, nice.
the other part that's been a great fun for me is when I was working in the creature shop, I did manage, like I said, the Muppet. So I got to look through all the boxes of stuff. I got to look through the history of the company. It's kind of like rooting through Jim Henson's attic, you know. There's a time when Jane Gutnick needed a camera for Kermit. So I ordered from the storage facility, give me all the Muppet cameras. So we had this box full of camera props from years and years and years. And broken up cameras that are rigged for puppets. And then inside there was this tiny little balsa wood camera. And the front of the lens, it wasn't a real camera, it was a prop. It said Wilkins. Oh my goodness, this is from the Wilkins and Wilkins coffee commercials from the 50s. So I hop on YouTube and I find this commercial where the one character says, whatever, if you don't, he goes to take a picture of the victim and, it explodes on him. So I grabbed this thing, which is starting to fall apart. And I contact Karen Falk at the Henson Archives and I send her a picture, said, shouldn't this be in a museum, as Indiana Jones would say? And she said, oh my goodness, please rescue that and ship it to me in New York. So I put it in bubble wrap. I took good care of it and I shipped it to her. And that's the thing I saw in the museum at the Skirball. They had the Wilkins Wonkins puppets with that camera, which had been getting crushed in a box full of old real cameras. There's all kinds of stuff like that where I'd find some cool prop or costume piece and realize, oh, this is a piece of Muppet history right here,
Absolutely. So, aside from performing in Muppet series and films, can you talk about some of the commercials you got to do with the Muppets?
Commercials. Yeah, I did some of them were more, exciting than others. Well, they're all exciting. But I did a Facebook portal commercial where I was Dr. Tease in the background of a Christmas party. I did one for Xfinity where we spent a day filming really short commercials for every one of the award shows during award seasons because they were selling the cable system. But the funnest one, of course, the most famous one is probably that Lipton tea commercial where the meme was made of Kermit sipping the tea.
Yes, yeah.
There was a great shot in that commercial where it was like we shot it on one of those New York streets at one of the studios. I'm going to sound fancy and I can't remember what studio it was, but I really can't. I think it was Warner Brothers, New York Street. But it was the world was transfixed where everybody was animal. So they had like 20 different animal puppets. I didn't know they had that many animal puppets. And all of us played animal, but different versions of animal. So I was punk rock girl animal. And Kermit against the stream of pedestrian traffic, and the rest of us were animals. So I think the gag was like, boy, if you don't find your inner calm, you're going to be everyone in the world is freaked out like they're animal. So that was a lot of fun. It's always fun to work on those New York streets too, because it's like movie business stuff and it's like beautifully fake and everything. And that was, also that's probably the most famous Muppets commercial I've been a part of because of that meme. And Puppeteer animal, yeah.
Absolutely. So, what's it like getting do TV appearances with Muppets?
Well, it's a lot of fun, and I will say one of the neat things that I didn't necessarily expect about it is the Muppets make celebrities melt, So sometimes when you're working with a celebrity, they're very protective people because you never know when some weirdo's going to be weird with you and stuff. So I always kind of give celebrities their distance. If anything, I try to make them feel comfortable. Like, you don't got to worry about me. But with the puppet, whether it's the Muppets or some of the other shows I've worked on, it's really great because you get to see a celebrity sort of relax because it's as much fun for them as it is for us. And everybody loves the Muppets. So usually you're seeing a celebrity having the best day of their life because they get to work with Kermit and Piggy and Fozzie. What was the question again? What were you specifically asking about?
Like about doing TV appearances with the Muppets, because there were a lot of fun ones like Dancing with the Stars, and they appeared on all of these wonderful shows.
I'll tell you, I was on Dancing with the Stars, and
nice.
I did the eagle in a shot, and that was one of the most nerve-wracking things and one of the proudest things I've ever done because that's shot live to tape, and what that means is, we're going to do it live, even though the show isn't aired live, but if you make a mistake, the mistake stays in the show. They're not going to go back and pick it up.
Right, yeah.
And we were doing the song from the movie with the dancers. And whenever I got to see the dancers work, you're just like, these people are amazing artists. And how do they do this? How they're made out of rubber, these people. but they were live switching the cameras. And Dancing with the Stars is done in this kind of arena. There are like 45 cameras. They actually brought all the Muppeteers into the control room to show us, like, here's what we're working on, guys. Here's how we're working. It's just so we could get our heads around what we could expect. And it looked like Mission Control. I've never seen a TV control room that had this giant, it looked like a villain's lair from a science fiction movie, just screens and buttons and flashing lights like the Death Star. But there was a bit where there's a line in the song, and I was Sam the Eagle in that Muppet Show set with the archways. You know, they'd rebuilt that, and he had a reaction. He had to just go like this, what? Like this. But I had to nail because it was live to tape. They weren't going to come back for little old me and do a retake, a reshoot. If I didn't get it right, it was going to not be right. I think we shot it twice, and then we had to move on because they have other stuff to do. It's Dancing with the Stars. It's not the Muppets Dancing with the Stars. And I nailed it. So whenever I see that clip, I go, I did it. And I think I even did here's a little secret. Sam Eagle's eyes go left, right? He has a mechanism in his head, but to make that, you actually slide your fingers forward and back. So it's not like you're using your thumb to go left or right. So it's completely like, you got to get your brain around that. And I don't work Sam the Eagle very often. So I knew I wanted him to look left, right, or right, left, or whatever. And I had to that was the thing that freaked me out the most. And when we got through that shot and I nailed it, that was great. That was a lot of fun. And again, it was another situation where the whole crew was so thrilled because it was Muppets Day. You know, you show up on a set with the Muppets and everyone's like, oh my goodness, the Muppets are here. It's a great feeling to be a part of that. It's like bringing a birthday party to people, you know?
Yeah, it's always a good feeling.
Always is. Yes, indeed.
So it's another situation where I would never be anywhere near Dancing with the Stars. You know, like I got the Grammys were just here in LA last night. I remembered I was on the Grammys with the Jim Henson Company. We did the song Forget You with CeeLo Green and Gwyneth Paltrow almost 10 years ago. So I got to know what it's like to be at the Grammys. And the Grammys are crazy backstage. And I would never have known that if I hadn't been with puppets, you know?
Nope. So moving on from the Muppets, you puppeteered various characters on the Fusion talk show. No, you shut up. No, really, that is the title of the show, people. Could you talk a little bit about what that show was about?
That show is one of the favorite things I've ever done. That show is sort of like the Daily Show with puppets. It was hosted by a human being, the comedian Paul F. Tompkins, who has a great career. He's a very funny guy, improv guy. He does Comedy Bang Bang with Scott Aukerman. And he was the human host. And then myself and a bunch of the other Henson puppeteers, we were various characters. And the show was written, but we also improvised quite a bit. And it was a current affairs show or a popular culture show where the gag was like, this is the show where we talk about the topics of the day until we scream at each other so much we have to cut to commercial. And we used to really lean on that. Like at the end of every conversation, we'd all be yelling at each other. And I did 45 episodes of that. I did 2.5 seasons of that. And it was one of the proudest things I've ever done because it kind of combined puppetry with improvisational comedy, which I love being a part of, with current affairs and politics, which is also a big thing for me. So it was sort of like the perfect combination of all my interests, and I got to do it with puppets. And it's another show where we had so many guests that I'll be watching TV now and go, oh, I worked with them. I remember now. They were on No, You Shut Up. Now, the show is hard to find, but if you look on YouTube, someone has put quite a few of the episodes on YouTube, and I hope you can check it out because it was just a treat. It was just a treat because the cast kind of puppeteers kind of settled down to like my good friends Colleen Smith and Drew Massey, and we were sort of that's the kind of show. Yeah, Drew's fantastic. I think I'm going to see him later this week. That's the type of show where, yeah, we're doing it for the audience, but we're also doing it for each other. We're kind of cracking each other up underneath that desk, you know. And we would, the writers were great on that show, but we also were encouraged to punch up the stuff ourselves. Excuse me. So we'd be under the desk with our little scripts going like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And kind of helping each other come up with bits and everything like that. So it's kind of like recess. It was kind of like getting paid to play with puppets. It's more than play, it's work. I respect the work, but to also bring our wheelhouse into the puppet world and what we specialize in comedy, improv, and politics. I love that show so much. I love that show so much.
So you also got to perform Blurp in the revival of Sigmund and the Sea Monsters. What was it like getting to work on that?
That was insane because when I was a little kid, before the Muppet Show, uh, there was Sigmund and the Sea Monsters. Now, I used to watch the other Croft shows, the Bugaloos and Lidsville and Puff and Stuff. But Sigmund was like one of my first favorite shows. And I remember I was in the parking garage at Univision after shooting a day of No You Shut Up, and I got a call from Bradley Zweig, the producer of Sigmund, and said, I think he said Donna Kimball recommended me, but I knew him from Henson as a production manager guy. He had produced shows at Henson. And he said, "Would you like to audition for Sid and Marty Krofft?" I'm like, "Would I?" And it was a revival of Sigmund the Sea Monsters, one of my favorite childhood shows. And I went through the audition process, got to meet Marty Krofft, who unfortunately just passed away recently.
Uh,
Um, and I landed the part, and I got to play Blurp, the mean brother. Now, inside the Blurp suit is a super former Megan Godfrey, and I'm doing the facial features, which really was open to mouth, close. There might have been eye blinks with that. I don't think the eyes went left, right on that. And there wasn't as much improvisation in that. It didn't, that's just the way it was. But I got to do a little improvisation and worked with Drew Massey again. He was Sigmund, and Victor Yared was Slurp, the two brothers. And I loved it was like I told the director, Kevin Smith, when he was guesting on another show on Earth to Ned, I said, I feel like when I was 7 years old or 6 years old, I made a deal with the devil that I don't remember, that like, I want to work on Sigmund and the Sea Monsters. I want to work with the Muppets. And then I lived this life of theater actor and camera actor. And then the devil said, remember, you wanted to be a puppeteer? Here you go. Because the chances of being involved in something like that, it tickles me to no end. And the star of the original show, Johnny Whitaker, when I was a little kid, I was like, I want to play with him. I want to be him. I want to be with that guy. And then he guested on the new show. So I feel like I grew up wanting to live in TV land. Or when I was a little kid, I wanted to move to TV land, and then I did. I crawled inside the television, and I'm part of all the things I loved when I was a kid. We got to shoot it down at the beach here in LA. It felt like one of my greatest California moments. We were shooting the show under the big rock where Charlton Heston sees the Statue of Liberty at the end of the Planet of the Apes. And then just this pod of whales swims by, like just the whales. I'm puppeteering a beautiful creature here for Sid and Marty Krofft, and there's whales, and it's a gorgeous day, and this is a great life. This is awesome. It was like a dream come true that I kind of forgotten had been a dream of mine. Yeah, it was an honor too. It was a real honor to work for Sid and Marty.
oh, yes.
Yeah, and I also love that Blurp
That's wonderful.
is kind of the mean brother and kind of the scary brother. And the show is in no way scary, but I always thought like if there's a little bit of an edge that I could kind of sneak in here to give it some texture and maybe scare some little kids somewhere. Not too bad, but kind of a fun scare. So I'm really thrilled that Blurp had little teeth. He had little fangs. If you look close, he's got little sharp teeth. So that's kind of, he didn't have to be all sweet and innocent all the time like Sigmund. I got to be a little mean, a little edgy. And Dave Arquette in that show is kind of fun to work with him and everything. And it was a great time.
Yeah, wonderful show.
Still on Amazon Prime. Check it out.
Absolutely.
Oh, yes. Yes, absolutely.
Yes. So now, speaking of Mark Croft, and of course those who don't know, in November of last year, we very sadly lost one of the creators of Mark Croft projects. Mario, can you share any memories getting to know him or work with him?
Sure. Well, in the original show, the actor Billy Barty was in the Sigmund suit, the Sigmund walk around puppet suit. So when I went into my audition, and that was, 1973, so a long time ago. When I went into my audition over at the Crofts, there was the original Sigmund costume. Now I found out later it was a reproduction of the original Sigmund costume, but it was the look of the original Sigmund costume. So I was getting ready to do my read as Blurp, and Marty's over there. And I said, is that the original Sigmund? And he said, yeah, Billy Barty's still in there. And then
Oh, that's great.
he went back into his office, and I was working with Bradley and some of the writers, and they were kind of combining actors, puppeteers together to uh, make teams, chemistry reads and stuff. And they said, well, before you leave, Marty just wants to talk to you one more time. So we went into Marty's office, and it was me and like a crowd of people, like the writers and the producers and Bradley. And I sat with all those people looking at me. I sat down in front of Marty, and Marty just said, well, they like you. Can you be funny? What a thing to say. I said, when you pay me, yeah. And that made him laugh, and I got the gig, you know. But it felt like, wow, is it really coming down to this moment? Do I have to come up with something funny right now to get this job? But I guess I did, and I got the job. So
It's wonderful. Yeah, rest in peace, Marty.
yeah,
Yes.
I will say another thing too about Marty. Behind the scenes, he wasn't necessarily totally G-rated. And I remember we did a screening of the show, and he got up in front of everybody and he said, well, thanks everybody for everything. And he said something about the studio, something a little R-rated about the studio, like, well, forget about them, blah, blah, blah. And I turned to Bradley and I said, well, it's a good thing no one from the studio is here. And Bradley said, oh no, they're here. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
That probably went over well.
Yeah, well, he didn't care, you know. That everyone knew about Marty. If you see his appearance on Pamela Adlon's Better Things, that's Marty. He playing himself, obviously, but you know, he was terrific, and you know, I was honored to get to work with him. It was a real treat because he was a little bit of old Hollywood too. And one time he was developing a show, he had me come over to read for it, and he said, "Can you stay?" I said, "Yeah," because you want to go have lunch in the commissary. So this is over at CBS Radford, but the commissary there, like the commissary is a thing from old Hollywood, you know. And I had a roast beef sandwich with Marty Krofft in the commissary, like it was 1938, and I was Cary Grant or something. It was just a great experience, silly little experience, but it just felt really good.
That's wonderful.
That is wonderful. So you were an additional puppeteer on the Henson alternative film, The Happy Time Murders. Very, very good movie. What was working on that like?
Well, that was fun. By then, you know, I'd gotten used to being, you know, done a lot of Muppet stuff and stuff, so I definitely knew the drill. I didn't do a lot on that show. I had a couple little specialty shots, like it was a gruesome show, but one of the puppets get kind of a shot, and like I had to coordinate. We could only do it so many times, so we had to get it right, like how the puppet was going to crumple down. I think we could only do it once because of the way they'd rigged up the squibs on the puppet and stuff. It was shot way up in Santa Clarita, which, you know, pretty far from LA, about an hour drive. So going up and down from there was kind of a pain. And then we shot down at Venice Beach, which is another one of those situations where, like, unlike the beach where I shot Sigmund, Venice Beach there are tourists and people everywhere, and you've got this puppet, and you kind of had to keep some of the crazy at bay a little bit and everything. That was a lot of fun. Melissa McCarthy was the lead in that, and yeah, that was a good time. I kind of was watching, like, oh, I wonder how this movie's going to play because this is raunchy. You know, this film is raunchy. I'm kind of grateful I didn't have to say or do any of the raunchiest things in there. You know, don't blame me if I scarred your child if you put this movie on by mistake. It's not my fault. You know.
Right.
It was great. Yeah, I got to work with all my friends like I love to do when I work on puppet stuff.
Yes, and you also, as you mentioned earlier, worked on the Netflix series, The Curious Creations of Christine McConnell, puppeteering Rankle. Can you talk a bit about that?
That was just a delight. That was terrific. I didn't know anything about Christine McConnell when we started, and she's amazing. You know, her artistry, and everything about what she does, and her great sense of humor, her gothic horror combined with glamour type of thing. And you know, not for nothing, I did that show right before I moved out of the apartment that I was a 1 block walk away from the studio. So again, here I'm working on a Netflix show, walking to work. You know, nobody does that in Los Angeles. You don't walk to work on a TV show. You know, so Mummy Cat, and I controlled the facial features and did the voice in real time. And then Tim Legassi and sometimes Amanda Maddock would be, they were the ones that had, yeah, Tim's terrific. Amanda's terrific. They're the ones that had to be in uncomfortable positions. I just had to sit in a chair in front of a TV monitor like 20, 30 feet away. One thing that was weird about that was I had the microphone on my forehead like we do with puppets, but I was using a Futaba controller, a model aircraft controller, to control Rankel's facial features. But the sound of the levers were going, they're making noise that was hitting my microphone. So they had me wear a blanket on my lap while I was doing it. So it was very strange. Like if you visited that set, you'd see this weirdo over in the corner doing a, fake British accent, doing something on his lap while this beautiful cat is doing something on the other side of the set. But that was a wonderful experience because, again, I was working with Drew Massey and Colleen Smith. Drew was the voice of Edgar. Colleen, of course, was Rose. And it was like, no, you shut up again. It was like a reunion. Well, we all do Puppet Up together, too. So we've all worked together for the last 20 years. So by the time we got to Christine McConnell, we definitely had kind of a shorthand with each other where we could pitch each other jokes. Kirk Thatcher was directing, and he encouraged us to expand on the script and add stuff. I say this all the time. I had a line I came up with in a table read that ended up making it into the trailer for the show, where Christine says, I do think we had the neighbor tied up in our dungeon. The characters had the neighbor tied up in the dungeon of Christine's house, and we were going to kill him because it's a cooking show. And she said, I do think we should kill him. And we go, yay. She says, with kindness. And at the table read, I said, oh, that takes so long. And then the next table read, they had given that line by mistake to Edgar. And I stopped there. He said, no, that's Rankel's line. That's my line. Do not give that to, I love you, Drew, but you don't get to have that line. That's my line. And I was kind of like the bonus nachos line. When the trailer for the show came out, that's the last line in the trailer. I'm like, that's me. I did that. So I didn't just get to play this wonderful character, this beautiful puppet. I got to riff and come up with jokes and bits and stuff, which is kind of my specialty with the Henson Company, with Puppet Up, and then Rust and Ed, which I hope we get a chance to talk about. My wheelhouse is improv comedy with puppets, skewing for adults and adults and the whole family kind of a thing. I'd love to do more little kid stuff, but that's just, except for Sigmund, that doesn't tend to be where I work. I think they're scared of me. I think they think I'm going to make a speech or something.
Definitely. Funny enough, speaking of Earth to Net, that's literally the next question. So what's it like getting to performing Cornelius for that series?
That was a dream come true. It's might be the character I'm the proudest of so far in my career. You guys have all seen the show, I hope, right?
Oh, yes.
Yep.
Okay. So
yes, and it's sad it got removed from Disney Plus. I don't know if you're aware of that. It got removed.
I'm aware. It is sad. I do hope that in some way, the show will be able to be seen again, maybe on a different platform or a different network or something, because it's such a good show.
Yeah.
We shot it again at the Henson Studios, and the Ned puppet, as you can see, is this massive, massive thing that took 6 people to puppeteer. I will say, my good friend Morgana Ignis, she was inside the Ned puppet doing the body controller. She was also part of the team on Christine McConnell. She was in the Edgar suit, and Morgana is a wonderfully gifted performer and suit performer. The thing that was exciting about that was that we were doing a talk show. And our head writer on that show was Eliza Skinner, and she'd worked on the Late Show or whatever James Corden show is called. So she comes from the comedy world and specifically the talk show world. So Paul Rugg, who you know from Freakazoid and Animaniacs and stuff, and then again Colleen Smith again. She was over there being Betty. Paul was being the voice and the face of Ned. Drew was driving Cornelius's eyeballs. So again, back to that shorthand thing. Cornelius has those beautiful eye stalks that are independent, and very rarely did I need to say over the comms, hey, Drew, when I say this line, can you do this with the eyes? Because I'm doing the head and the mouth, and then Nicolette Santino's doing the other hand. We all had that great shorthand of like, very rarely did I have to make any request of Drew. He was like simpatico with me. And again, back to it being a talk show. None of us had ever done a real talk show before, but it was a real talk show, meaning we had the voice of producers in our ears when the celebrities in the chairs saying, ask them this, ask them this. I actually asked them to stop doing that because as the sidekick, I didn't have the burden that Paul did as being the full host. So Paul is in the Conan position. I'm in the Andy Richter position. And on the show, when Andy Richter was the guest, Cornelius said, hey, can you give me any tips? Well, I did ask Andy backstage, can you give me any tips on how to be a sidekick? And he said what he said on air. He said, hang back. When you have something to say, get in there. Otherwise, you're just there to make everybody else look good and have a good time. So as we progressed on that show, it was nerve-wracking at first because I felt this responsibility to our guests for us to be on top of our game. But like I said, we'd never done a talk show before like that. But after a while, we really got into the swing of it. You know, we would sit down with our guests for like 45 minutes to an hour, as you guys understand, and we would cut that down to like an 8 or 10-minute segment. So I realized, oh, they're just going to use the best of what we do, so I can relax. You know, I can really enjoy what I'm doing. And the other thing, back to that thing about when celebrities are around puppets, they kind of melt and relax too. They get just as excited as we are to see them because it's so rare for them. So almost every one of our guests that came on that show said, this is the best talk show experience I've ever had. This was so much fun. And then adding to that, Cornelius, my character, because he's a smaller puppet, on the weekends, I would go shoot Cornelius's trips to the surface. As people who don't know, our characters were living in a hidden spaceship underneath Chicago, I think. So I was working every day of the week, but I didn't mind because I loved it so much. And then I had a great producer on my segments, Morgan Evans, who's a screenwriter. He would be in my ear on the segments, and we would just make up funny stuff to say and crack each other up. And a lot of what I got to do on Earth to Ned was stuff I made up. It was stuff I improvised, including
Nice.
I got to do I'm a huge Star Wars fan. So Billy D. Williams was one of the guests. I got to meet Lando.
Oh, wow.
BB-8 was on the show. I got to see BB-8 working around. And one of the guests was on, and I sort of planned a Star Wars trivia, 3-question trivia quiz for one of the guests. And there were representatives from Lucasfilm on the set that day. And I didn't tell anybody I was going to do this. And afterwards, I said, that's a good quiz. Those were good questions. And all the answers were correct. And it made it into the show. So again, back to my childhood, living out my childhood as part of my profession. It's insane that I got to do Star Wars stuff. I'd love to work on Star Wars stuff. I have done a little Star Wars stuff, but I'd love to do more. But just to be able to celebrate and use that in my life and career was really exciting for me, really rewarding. And that show had so much heart. And the other thing I'll tell you about Earth to Ned, when the coronavirus, the COVID pandemic first started, especially during the period we were in lockdown, that's around the time that Earth to Ned premiered. And to the point where I recorded all of the show intros in my closet here in my apartment because I couldn't go into the studio. I did one day at Warner Brothers, and they literally, this was in March 2020. And we were like, what's this new disease? I better wear a mask. I better bring gloves. I better bring hand sanitizer. And I went to this booth, and they had sprayed it with aerosol stuff. And I did, the fancy version of what we call additional dialogue recording. And then literally as I left the Warner Brothers lot, I found out that afternoon in Variety, Warner Brothers has shut down their lot, like behind me. They closed and locked the gate behind me as I drove away because of coronavirus.
Wow.
Wowza, this thing's real. And then, like I said, the show premiered, and it made a lot of critics' best show of the year lists. And it made a lot of critics, it made a list, I think in Vulture or Decider, were like the top 5 talk shows of 2020. And we were up there with Amber Ruffin, Seth Meyers, Jimmy Fallon, Earth to Ned. And I got someone tweeted at me that the show meant so much to them because his son was so scared during the lockdowns. But watching Earth to Ned was the thing that calmed him down and made him happy. And he wanted to watch it over and over again. And he really loved Cornelius. And I thought, well, that's the best thing I could hope for, that I got to do this great comedy show. But if it provided not just laughs, but comfort to people during a dark time, what's better than that,
Absolutely.
Exactly. I think going back to Earth to Ned for a second, I think it was Donna Kimball who we had on previously who mentioned, speaking of working with Ned, I think it was, what did she refer to it as? The glitter pit around Ned. So
yeah, that's because Ned's jacket had a lot of glitter in it. And then under the jacket are 4 performers. So no matter what they did, they'd leave at the end of the day. He just shed glitter like crazy. I got to do some of that clod stuff where I would get in the glitter pit. It was tight in there. Like
I
actually,
bet.
I wear glasses, and I got glasses because I was doing a puppet show where I thought I saw what I was doing, and then later it was like I'd screwed it up because my eyesight was starting to go. So it's time for me to admit I'm getting older and get glasses. But that the glitter pit was so tight. I was doing a clod up on Ned's shoulder, but the monitor was like here, not here. It was here because we're in this tight little circle bouncing on apple boxes and stuff. Morgana's up on this rig that looks like Han and Luke and the Millennium Falcon shooting TIE fighters. I was kind of jealous of her because that was a cool rig. Um, she's on this kind of like mounted swinging chair that she could use her body mass to swing his body around and stuff. And it's with this cool monitor. It totally looked like the Millennium Falcon quad gunner. See, I'm a fan. I know the terms. I didn't have to be in the glitter pit that often, so I didn't get glitter poisoned like the rest of them quite as much. I was over Cornelius. We had it fairly easy, over in Cornelius town.
Yeah, sounds about right. So on stage, as we've brought up many times throughout this, you've performed in the puppet improv troupe Puppet Up Uncensored.
Yes, sir.
What's that like? Because I've seen so much from it. It's really amazing just watching it. But what's it like for you actually performing in it?
Well, I'll tell you, when I did my first ever show, I was only in like 2 or 3 improvs. And I've done improv, but combining puppetry, especially puppetry with Brian Henson watching you for the Jim Henson Company. I always joke with people like, I didn't set out to be a puppeteer, but then when I did become one, it's at the Jim Henson Company. It's like, well, I didn't set out to be a drummer, but then someone said, you want to be in the Beatles? It's kind of nuts. My first ever puppet up show, my wife said, you look terrified. You look absolutely terrified. You got to smile when you're sitting in the chair waiting your turn because you're scaring people. People are sad for you. And I've been doing it now, uh, over a decade, obviously, maybe 15 years of this. Um, I've reached a point where I've done it so much that I'm not scared or nervous about it at all anymore. I just have a great time doing it. And the way the show is developed and maintained is we do workshops at the Jim Henson Company, which are sort of like classes, but they're mostly improv workshops where we have a camera set up in the screening room, in Charlie Chaplin's old screening room, and we practice with the monitor. It's a tighter situation than we are on stage, and we just crack each other up while we hone our improv skills or develop new improv structures and stuff. And I've been doing that. That's like a club I'm part of or something. It's also like therapy practically. So I dare say, and I got to knock wood, that I'm really comfortable in Puppet Up now because I'm at ease. I'm with my friends. I've done it a lot. I've got to do it in Vegas and New York and all kinds of different places, little tours and everything like that. That now it just feels like a very comfortable situation for me as opposed to a nightmarish, terrifying situation when I first started. And I always tell people, like, you got 2 things going on at once. You got the puppetry, which you got to stay on top of. You got to make that look good and sharp while your brain is doing the improv. So it's almost like so much is going on that it helps you be in a better flow state because you can't, if you freak out about it, you're not going to do anything. So you just got to remember, I'm here with my friends. We're kind of cracking each other up for the benefit of this audience. It's a very happy place for me. It's a lot of fun. And the show also has these historical recreations in it. So kind of early days of the Muppets, pre-Muppet stuff that doesn't belong to Disney, frankly. We do Java, I've grown accustomed to your face. And then in the last year, we've added in with new puppets from the New York shop, Glowworm, which was originally done with Kermit,
Oh
but
yeah.
fish puppet. I do the big giant monster that eats the puppet at the end. And this other bit, Business. Have you seen this one?
I think I have.
Adam Savage came through and did, if you look on YouTube, Adam Savage did some nice
Yes, that's right. Yes.
And that one is a real gear stripper because we're doing it to a Jim Henson audio recording. So we're really using Jim's voice. And it's just one of those things that's complicated and not perfectly syncopated. It's tricky to learn. So that's a real challenge to put that one into the show. So if people come and see Puppet Up Uncensored, it is not for kids. We do it in Hollywood, but we also tend to tour it. You're going to not just see us do comedy, improv, and singing and everything. You're going to get to see some really fun recreations from the early days of the Jim Henson Company. So that's a real. And again, that's another thing. We're like, wow, I'm part of this legacy. I mean, that's such an honor and such a treat to be a part of that.
Definitely.
It's like Puppet Up is like for me. I always say, like I said it in New York to Leslie Cryer Rudolph. She was a little nervous. We were both nervous.
Love Leslie so much.
Fantastic. Yeah, I just saw her on the beach shooting Muppets Mayhem. She gave me a bear token. I think it's over here. She gave me a present.
Aww.
We were about to, the show was starting, the lights were starting, and I looked and I said, "Hey, it's recess. This is just recess. It's like we're in elementary school, and we get to play with puppets. Yes, it's a profession. It's something we take very seriously. At the same time, how can you take it so seriously? You know, the audience wants to watch us have fun. We get to do this. Yes, we're nervous about improv, but we've practiced this. We're good at this. We know what we're doing. It's more than an honor. It's just a blast doing Puppet Up. I love doing that show.
Absolutely. Now, in theater, you perform with the improv troupe, the Groundlings. Can you talk about performing with them?
Sure. I mean, the Groundlings are a thing that a lot of people do when they come to Los Angeles, especially like in the late 90s, I think. When I moved here, you know, I was a trained actor. I went to Temple University, got a BA. My wife went to the American Conservatory Theater. A lot of my friends did too. But I do think that film and television, especially television, starting in the 90s and then for the next 20 years, improv was almost more important than actor training. They wanted to know you could improv. Certainly in commercial auditions and stuff, they really want improv. Like all those Geico commercials or the also the progressive commercials. Stephanie Courtney is a Groundling. She's Flo, the progressive lady. All those people are Groundlings people. So it's an institution, the Groundlings. And Puppet Up is directly related to it. Our host, Patrick Bristow, who created the show with Brian Henson, he's a longtime Groundling. And the structures we do in Puppet Up tend to come from Groundlings or influenced by Groundlings. So when I first moved to LA, I didn't need to have a day job. I just gotten off the road from doing this wonderful Steve Martin play called Picasso de la Panagile. So I had some money in the bank. So I took Groundlings classes, bing, 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 1, 2, 3. And it was great. It's also a little nerve-wracking because it's also kind of like Saturday Night Live Academy. You know, you can really mess yourself up if you get in your head and think, I'm here to get famous, or this is going to open doors for me, because it can open doors for you. But also a lot of people wash out of the Groundlings because they get so in their head about how important it is. And a lot of people wash out of the Groundlings and go on to big and better things. So I tried to not get too in my head about it. And then I got the job at Jim Henson's Creature Shop. And I didn't take Groundlings classes anymore until 9 years later when I said, I want to go back to Groundlings. And that's a weird way to do it. Most people kind of keep going. So I had this big gap in my Groundlings experience, but I did contact them and say, can I pick up where I left off? Assuming they would say, no, you got to go take level 3 again. And they said, no, you're slated to be in level 4. Bingo, there's a spot. You can be in level 4. So I took what's called their advanced class. And again, I was really doing it not thinking I'm going to get on Saturday Night Live. I was 40 years old at this point. I mean, Saturday Night Live hires young people and people that are like sketch machines, people that like the people I was in Groundlings with. I'll tell you, I'll drop some names in a second. So I did their advanced class, and then I got into their Sunday company, which I didn't expect. That's their junior varsity. They do a show every Sunday night, which is very much like a Saturday Night Live situation. You meet on Wednesday, you pitch sketches, you write them, and then the director chooses which one is going to be in the show, much like Saturday Night Live. And then you got to go run around town and find costumes and props and stuff. If you got to do it yourself, you got to give your lines to your colleagues. You spend all Sunday afternoon teching the show, and then Sunday night you do a show. And I got into the Sunday company. And like I said, I was in it with an incredible cast of people. Everybody in my group of Sunday company has gone on to big things. My friend Laurel Kopic is Jan, the Toyota lady. Taran Killam, that's where I ran into Taran Killam from. Here we go, from the Amanda Show. Remember I said I worked with him when he was 18 and when he was 28? Well, this is when I worked with him when he was 28.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Again, Hollywood is a tiny town. It's a little tiny, like The Simpsons. Oh, there's a joke on the old Simpsons when they try to make a movie in Springfield and the Springfieldians gouged them for money. So the producers go back to Hollywood. It's so nice to be back in Hollywood where everyone's so safe and nice and kind, which it's not like that here. Jillian Bell was in that group. Nassim Pedrad, she went on to SNL. Ian Gary, a good friend of mine who's does tons of commercials. Ryan Gall, I'm going to leave somebody out. Greg Roman, Tom Blank, Dana Powell, Now I'm doing that thing like on award shows where if I leave somebody out, I'm going to feel really bad. But it wasn't. That was a great experience because of that thing of like, you got to write sketches. And some of the other people in the group are much better than me at it. And I did get kicked out. They do a thing where they cut people, and I got cut. I didn't make it to main groundling, but like someone wrote to me a letter like, no one can take away from you that you were in the Groundling Sunday Company. And I got to have that experience, and it was an honor. It was exciting. It was very challenging. And yeah, it's definitely helped me develop a skill set. I mean, after that, I got on to Know You Shut Up, Christy McConnell, Earth to Ned, a lot more. I was already doing Puppet Up, but a lot more Puppet Up. So it just helped me hone my improv and sketch comedy and stuff. And I wouldn't change it for the world.
Nice, that's nice. So as we're kind of getting close to wrapping up here, can you share any projects you're currently working on?
Golly, I wish I could. As careers go, you got high times and down times, and I don't really have much going on. I know there's some more Puppet Up coming up. I'm doing a lot of training over at the Henson Company. Drew is helping some of us learn. I'm sure you've heard about the Henson digital puppetry or just digital
Oh
performance.
yeah,
Yes.
a lot of wonderful stuff.
Oh yes.
I've been around that thing for 20 years. I've demonstrated it for people that came into the creature shop. I did shoot a pilot using it, puppeteering the creature, puppeteering the face of a character. But during this downtime, Drew is helping me and some other performers hone our skills, not only in puppeteering with the rig, but doing the programming. Because like each puppeteer can get in under the hood on that thing and make every little button on the rig do what they wanted it to do. So I go in once or twice a week over to Henson while I'm, auditioning for other things. And I'll tell you, if I get another gig, I'll let you guys know. Okay, I'm sure there's something coming.
All right, cool.
The actor's life, even puppeteers is what we do. I'm in between gigs right now. Let's just say that.
Nice.
I'm auditioning for TV shows on the other side of this wall. My wife and I audition for stuff all the time. It's kind of a neat thing about the COVID thing. That's nothing neat about COVID, but the industry switched to preliminary auditions are done at home, self tapes. And as an Angelino, boy, do I love not driving around town for like a 5-minute audition. So that's just the actor's life, My audition, my wife and I spent the weekend filming 4 or 5 auditions in our dining room, and we both have gotten jobs now as actors where we never even met the people. We just shot it in our dining room and then show up on set. So that's kind of like the way the world is right now. It's sort of cool.
Yeah.
That's great. So the last question that Matt's about to ask is a question we ask all of our guests at the end. Go ahead, Matt.
Thank you, Chris. This podcast is called Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show. When you think of nostalgia, what do you think of? Or in your own words, how do you define the word nostalgia?
Well, for me, when I think of nostalgia, I really think of the 1970s. And that goes back to, for good or for bad, like I said, the 70s for a middle-class, privileged American kid was about cartoons and cereal, recess and summertime, And I really do think of maybe I watch too much TV. I don't know. I work in TV, so maybe I was doing research. Especially when you think I got to work for the Jim Henson Company, the Muppets, and Sid and Marty Krofft. It's weird. I almost feel like I was doing research. And nostalgia is a wonderful thing. It can go a little too far. You don't want to get sad about it. I think nostalgia is good when it's a good memory. But if you're sad about it, you got to remember to be in the present moment, not worry about the past or the future so much. But I'm a very nostalgic person because I had a good childhood. I think I had a nice childhood. And like a lot of people, I'm just this kind of a big kid. I figured out a way to play for a living. I hope I get to do it a lot more often. But for me, nostalgia is kind of a motivator for me a little bit. In its proper place, I think, and certainly we live in an era where, so many people want to see the things from their childhood, but now done in a giant Marvel movie way, and hopefully that doesn't take away from new material being created, but it's a lot of fun to see things rebooted and stuff. And I just got to get myself on a Star Wars show.
Great words to end on. Well, Michael, thank you so much
Awesome.
for taking the time to do this. This was a blast.
Sure. Thanks for having me, you guys.
Of course.
Yes. Yeah, of course. And thank you so much for being on, and thank you so much for what you've done over the years in the puppetry field, and thank you for what you've done to be a part of our lives. Keep up the great work what you're doing now. I cannot wait what's next in store for you.
Me too. I can't wait to see what's in store for me either.
Well, keep in touch, Michael. I'll let you know when this goes up.
Cool. Thank you. Got a lot of great guests. You've got everybody on this show. It's really fun to see everybody's interviews and stuff. So good for you
Yes.
guys.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely. We definitely have
Thank
lots
you.
of fun. Well, enjoy the rest of your day,
Yes, you
Michael.
do.
You too. Take care, you guys.
All right,
You
bye,
too,
Michael.
Michael.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Well, it's goodbye from us as well, everybody. We absolutely enjoyed our time with Michael Oosterom. His social media and his website will be in the description down below for anyone who wants to connect with him or check out his work.
Yes.
And as always, what do we say, Jake?
Keep nostalgia alive. Take care, everyone. See you next time. See ya. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to another wonderful Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show interview. Be sure to follow Jake and the crew on social media and stream the show wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And as always, remember to keep nostalgia alive. Bye-bye.